don't want to come to the dawah, we will bring the dawah to you.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. So today we will be making the part 2 of the Sultan's refutation. Hopefully, just by making this part, you guys will understand why most Muslims who are actually into, intellectualism don't take Sultan seriously, and why the Islamophobes and the people who support him shouldn't take him seriously as well. So let's get into it. So what I will be covering in this video is his introduction and chapter 1 and chapter 1, the introduction and chapter 1. So yes, these videos might take a while to cover completely. I agree with that, and I honestly have no issue with that, because I do think that refuting his whole book will be helpful, hopefully, inshallah. So let's get into it. So basically what in his introduction, he just gives his personal opinion. I don't want to get into his personal reasoning and arguing and his witty remarks regarding Islam, because those aren't arguments. I don't want to deal with something that are not arguments. I will not get into his emotional emotional rhetorics, but I will be getting into his emotional point of views when they are used in the arguments themselves. So in his introduction, he basically says that his life is threatened and blah 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 blah. Not going to get into that. Then he said that this book is being written to show the possibility, the lack of possibility of existence of any particular god. So basically all gods. Okay, so Hinduism, Christianity, anything. He's trying to show the lack of possibility. Okay, good. I mean, if he can do that, that would be something that is remarkable. But I will, by the end of the series, hopefully, which is good, but hopefully by the end of this series, we will be able to show why that he doesn't really do that. So let's get into it. So he goes on to say that there's a lack of possibility. He goes on to say that women are not treated well. He goes on to say that science is something that is amazing. Science, teaches us. And he also say, I want to point this thing out. He mentions, Professor Richard Dawkins, who inspired me, Sultan, to think outside the religious box. Okay, so seems like Professor Richard Dawkins is somewhat authoritative here. That's something that we should keep in mind reading this book. Okay, so then he goes on to say that the Muslims are, first, he's going on to say that Muslims are unknowledgeable about their own religion. They don't know that, women are not given rights and blah, blah, blah. And then he just, at this one point, says, but the true Islam is actually the Islam of the Taliban and ISIS. I don't understand that, because Taliban and ISIS are very different. Okay? They don't follow the same thing. He's basically, if they both are the true Islam, then they're two different complete Islams. Okay? Taliban are something completely else, and ISIS are something completely else. So just by stating that, it shows that he lacks fundamental knowledge of Sharia and how Islam rulings and laws and how to practice Islam is derived from the Qur'an, Hadith, and Sunnah. So let's move on from that. He gives a brief, reason of why he writes this book. So he quotes Muslims who are leaving Islam, and he says that these people are not, able to practice freedom and blah blah blah. The same thing. I just want to point out something really funny. He here mentions someone. Okay, he here mentions a person who says that there are Muslims that should be looked up to, or something like that. I'm just gonna take the name of the person. Okay, yeah. He mentions the Nobel Prize winner, Muslim. He says Muslim. Okay? includes some great Muslim thinkers and even scientists, such as the Muslim Nobel Prize winner in physics, Professor Abdul Salam. Professor Abdul Salam is a Qadiani. He's not a Muslim. Most people, like 90% of Muslims, regard him as a kafir. There's an ijma on Qadianis that they're not Muslim. So does he not understand this? Or what is he trying to do? So right off the bat, showing the lack of understanding here. So I don't want to get too much into the introduction, but now this is something really important that he states. To try to understand the validity of Islam or any other religion, I asked 3 questions. So Har Sultan asks 3 questions. Is there any evidence in the favor of this God? Is the morality depicted in this religion good? Is the science in this religion correct? Okay, fair enough questions, but there's a problem here. Is there any evidence in the favor of this God? Depends on your view and what you consider evidence. Okay? If you only consider scientific proof as evidence and everything as, pseudoscience or something like that, and you can consider something as deductive argument as not valid proof, or you consider something, let's say, that isn't science or that isn't done through the scientific method, if you don't consider that as valid proof, by the way, which science itself cannot prove itself through the scientific method, so yeah, you cannot even prove the scientific method itself. So it depends on what you consider as valid evidence in the favor of God, which he goes on in his later chapters, and we will get into that. And then the second point, is morality depicted in this religion wrong? So you guys remember he talked about Richard Dawkins, right? Richard Dawkins in his book, The River Out of Eden, talks about how there is no good or evil. In reality, there isn't really any good or evil. Okay, then he really loves Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins says there isn't really any good or evil. So is the morality depicted in this religion good? Like, what are you trying to say? So are you saying there is good and evil? Or is there not any good or evil? Because he himself says that morality is basically from evolution. So there isn't any actual objective good or evil. So this is his second, standard is weird, to say the least. Is the science in this religion correct? Well, fun thing. If he means science in this religion, if he means that it's concluded by the scientific method, which is inductive and doesn't objectively prove something, then if the science in a religion is incorrect, let's say, it is metaphorical or something like that. Even in Christianity, there are things which are metaphorical that might, if you take literally, might not be correct, but they are meant to be metaphorical. So even this, his category and his standard for the validity of any religion is not that robust, to say the very least. And then he goes on to say that his problem with the religion. Okay, we are still on his introduction. He talks a lot, very less argument. He's basically all bark, no bite. And childish argument. Let's, for example, why is the creator? So these are his frustration with the religion, okay, of Islam. Why is the creator of the billions of galaxies so obsessed with tiny humans, with their private life, what they do with their private lives? This is childish, as we can clearly see. Why? Just size, okay, does not determine the value of something. Okay, simple as that. Okay, we are human beings, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us directly. That is our theological belief, and I would say we know that is reality. But he doesn't believe that for some odd reason. And the creator of billions of galaxies so obsessed with what we tiny humans do in our private lives. Yes, so what? Just cause the universe has billions of stars, billions of galaxies, it doesn't make it more valuable than human beings. Where are you getting this value from? That the creator of the billions, like, I don't get it. Just cause he creates billions of galaxies, it follows that he shouldn't be obsessed with human beings. And he isn't obsessed. He cares and loves for you. If your father, doesn't want you to do certain things, does that mean he's obsessed with you? No, he cares and loves for you. So it's childish argument. Second frustration he has. Why does this God, who wants us to believe to him blindly, show no evidence of this existence? This is also very wrong, because in Islam it says, قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Bring forth your evidence if you're truthful. And it also says Islam is the religion for the people who think. I'm paraphrasing here, but you guys understand what I'm trying to say. So Islam wants us to think. Simple as that. Islam wants us to reason. Islam wants us to bring forth the evidence. Even the word ayah means evidence or proof. So definitely we do have the proof, and proof such as, ijad al-Qur'an, the prophecies, knowledge from history, knowledge of certain natural phenomena that could not have been possible at the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All these come together. You can formulate a cumulative argument which makes Islam true, or you can show why Islam is true without any reasonable doubt. But that is for another video. So, and the third and fourth of his, very childish arguments, he says Muslims claim that humans contaminated previous scriptures like Torah and Bible. Wouldn't the creator of everything know that he sends a prophet like Jesus and Moses? Their messages would be contaminated by other people and his message would be lost. If he knew, then what does this mean for all the Jews, Christians born after the Torah and the Bible were contaminated? Read our scripture. Read what we believe, Harris. This is childish. This is childish. You should know the answer to what we say. Okay? This is very childish. The people who were not sent a messenger, who were not sent proof, even if they were, they disbelieved, if they were not sent a proper messenger and the right message, then their judgment is with God separately. So what's your point here, bro? So idiotic. And the last of his frustration is, and the prayer every religious person thinks is a special hotline to their God. Here's the problem with dua, prayer. Okay, and then I'll focus on his ending part of this paragraph. Well, if you have to work hard to get something, what is the point of praying? First of all, praying and succeeding in this life are not exactly the same. You can be very rich and still be unsuccessful in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because righteousness, good deeds, these and the right beliefs, this is what actual success is. Prayer helps you gain righteousness. Okay? You might be unsuccessful in this world, but it helps you get righteousness. Just like how when you're sick, you might have a disease, it can be a blessing in a way because it helps you lose your sin. So, this shows the lack of understanding of theology of Islam by Harris Sultan. Very childish. And in the end of his introduction, he says something that I cringed so hard. Well, we are right. Then I'm sorry to say you are wrong. My name is Harris Sultan and I don't believe in your God. So childish, bro. So childish. Okay, then we get into the art of thinking. Okay, the art of thinking. What is the art of thinking? Let's look into that. The art of thinking. Basically, he gives us a criteria to, judge the validity of his argument. It's a false dilemma, you can say. He says you have two options. And I'm going to show you how you have more than two options. You can read the arguments and its premise and conclusion and without thinking critically accept it because you already believe it or reject it directly contradicts the views you hold. This is option A. So option A basically is stating that you are dogmatic and you do not do your research. That's what option A is, basically. What is option B? You can read the arguments, understand the premise, and assume the conclusion achieved it correct. Test and question the conclusion using your critical senses and then come to your conclusion, i.e. approve or reject it. Okay, what about the third one? I read the argument, understand the premise, do not assume the conclusion is correct, and I question the premise. What's wrong with that? I understand the premise, I question the premise. The premise might be incorrect, even if the tests are done are correct. Because the way that you're basically giving your argument is, I might accept something to be true, okay, which can be proven to be false. For example, I understand the premise, I assume the conclusion to be correct, I test it, the test, okay, using my critical senses, I test it, the test works, so I assume it to be true. This is not how it works, bro. Because this is how science, have been shown to be wrong in a certain times, such as what Newton thought gravity is the pulling of force. That's not what it is. It's curvature of space and time. And phlogiston, people thought that phlogiston was an actual thing. That's what science thought. It was a scientific fact, because using their critical senses, it seemed like that was how it was. It wasn't the case. And then he just goes on to explain this hypothesis and explain how method A is dogmatic and it won't prove anything, using the reasoning that how people concluded the earth is round. I don't want to go into that, but I want to point out one little thing. He in this chapter says that you cannot prove anything. Okay, you cannot prove anything. You cannot prove God to be absolutely false, or you cannot disprove it. But he also says that he can certainly disprove the religion. Okay, so I don't know what he's trying to say here. So he believes that he can absolutely, however, we can absolutely disprove the God that humans' mind have conceived, and so far by studying religion and using method B. He says he can absolutely disprove it. I would love to see that, but that's wrong. He can't. Okay, absolutely. I'm supposing he means objectively, without a doubt. Just like 1 + 1 equals 2, he can disprove it in that fashion. That's wrong. He can't, and I'm going to show you, inshallah, in the upcoming videos. So even in his thinking, we can see how they are wrong. They're not the only way to think, and this is his basis. You can just see his basis is wrong, and conclude from here that, well, in the future we can see that in the future chapter. Okay, then he also says one thing: the way that he uses the method B to show how the earth is round, okay, and stuff like that. And then he himself said, just like this thought experiment earlier didn't give us a conclusive answer but supported one side of the discussion, the earth being round, more than the other, various thought experiments and arguments in this book will suggest that the gods humanity has introduced are far from any real God. Just because we cannot completely disprove God, this is not any evidence that God exists, and we cannot disprove God, no matter how improbable. We cannot rule out God's existence. Okay, so first of all, he's an agnostic at this point, or an agnostic atheist, if he wants to say, call himself that. So yeah, so he himself says that there's a possibility there can be a God. Then he shouldn't be saying that. However, we can absolutely disprove the gods that humans' mind have conceived so far. It doesn't make any sense to me. So this is basically his way of thinking, okay, giving certain hypotheses and certain reasoning, and then in the end of that chapter he says you will, okay, so hopefully now that you have realized there is nothing wrong with changing your opinion in light of reason and better evidence, we Muslims don't have a problem with that, you will adopt method B. Okay, B, like I've said, there are more ways to look at evidence than just your method A and method B. Okay, we can adopt those too. Don't tell your audience you will adopt method B. Okay, then he says, let's get into religion, and don't be afraid to change your mind. No one's afraid here besides you, Haris, honestly. And as always, thank you for watching the video. Ma salama.